Let's dive into a little bit of, since we're talking about comics and most people associate comics with superheroes, let's get into your secret origin story. How did you get to become an independent creator and then where we're at now, advocating for independent creators?
Honestly, it all starts with a cartoon, believe it or not. I was 11, 12, and I was having a hard time at school. And I saw this back then. They did pilots in the morning, and I used to wake up early because I'm very hyper. And that was part of the reason at school. They wanted to basically put me in a different school. I was in a school for gifted kids. They wanted to go the opposite way. They wanted to go the extreme opposite. So they thought something was wrong with me. I was unable to learn because they'd been putting me in these classes, and these classes weren't helping my test scores. So I watched this thing, and it's actually behind me. I don't think you can actually see it, but it's on one of the shelves. It's the Pride of X-Men. It was the first X-Men cartoon, not the one in the 90s, but a pilot one that was actually narrated to a certain degree by Stan Lee. I saw this. It was a bunch of freaks. It was a bunch of people who didn't fit in, and I didn't feel like I fit in because some of the things I wanted to talk about was like war, and I wanted to talk about what was going on with the environment. And I'm 11 and 12, and my dad is like, he's not dumb. He's not any of that. You have to test them. So this whole point in my life, I feel like, I have people telling me I'm stupid. You want to believe it. And so I associated with this so much that I was like, I really like these characters. So I ran to the local comic store when I finally realized after 4 weeks, there was nothing else coming from that series. So, and there was no internet back then, kids. We couldn't look this stuff up. You had to patiently wait. So I figured, whatever, I guess this isn't going to happen. It wasn't the first time I saw a cartoon, one episode, never saw another one. So I was like, all right, let me go to the comic books, the local newspapers. There used to be stands that sold newspapers, kids. And there used to be comics in these places. So I grabbed the X-Men comic, took some money, bought it, got it back home, and it had none of the characters that were in that pilot's thing. They were in a season with totally different characters. But I loved the premise of the idea, so I stuck with it. I started to learn to read by literally having a comic book on the left side and a dictionary on the right side. And I started to teach myself to learn to read one word at a time, literally. And this was a complicated time of my life. They wound up giving me an IQ test. And from all the reading things before I got into comics, I was below level. I was basically illiterate for my age. And I couldn't read past, like, I think a second grader. So like the little pop-up books were basically the only thing that would ever really work for me. So with that in mind, I got this IQ test. The whole time I'm reading comic books, I'm continuing to learn to read. Turns out I was dyslexic, really, really dyslexic. Like, I have things that go with it, dysphag me and all that. And because I was 12 by the time I got the IQ test, there was nothing they could do for me. And they knew it. I would have to go through the final year of school for junior high, basically trying to learn how to overcompensate for my dyslexia that they never treated me for my entire life. And I fell in love with comics so hard because it gave me the ability to read that. And I went from the test scores that were a third grader when I was in, sixth, seventh grade, all the way up to college text in 1 year. And they had never seen that. And that was because the IQ test turned out I had a very high IQ. As a matter of fact, I had the highest in the building. I could be part of Mensa anytime I wanted to. But that just goes to show you, if someone tells you that you're dumb, you're going to believe it. So if people keep telling you something, don't necessarily believe it just because someone tells you that. You know who you are better than anyone else. My father, I'll never forget, advocated for me the whole time. I used that passion that he had to protect me and advocate for me for my son who's autistic. And I got to see that whole journey continue where he's this autistic kid who rips up books. I made him a comic book. He stopped ripping up books, and now he's starting to learn to read books. So comics have this power that it unlocks something inside of us.